full indictment to be made public and find out exactly who is named and what the charges are. But there is an expectation the former president is one of those named in the indictments. Mr. Ramaswamy, as president, you will have some tough choices to make, which brings us to our next question from Carolyn Morell, retired office manager in New Hampshire, and she has a question about the previous federal indictments against the former president.
Good evening. You said as president, if Trump was convicted, that you would pardon him. In doing so, how would you expect to work with Congress that is so divided already?
Look, I think that we have a major task ahead of us in reuniting this country, and I thank you for highlighting that major issue. One of the main reasons why I think it's really important to me that we actually do pardon Donald Trump, who is an opponent of mine in this election. I think I'm going out of my way to say it precisely because he is an opponent. We have to stand on the side of principle. We have to move forward as a country. I think if we remain a nation where whoever's in power is using police force against its political rivals, that's a dangerous downward slide for a nation. And I think that Congress, that's probably going to be one of the last places we see national unity. But I think where we're going to see national unity first is bubble up from we the people. I would venture to say, I've been to Manchester, New Hampshire many times. I love visiting you guys in the Granite State. If you think about your neighbors or your colleagues or your classmates, I think most of them believe in the same values that this nation was founded on. Free speech, self-governance, meritocracy. I think you believe that most of them do too. But you can't be sure anymore because we don't feel free to talk about it. So once we're able to start talking openly, we will realize that this country is far more united than the media or social media will have us believe. I think at the top it takes a president who says, we're done with the bickering, we're done with the weaponization of police power, we're moving forward as one nation. And once the president's able to do that, we set a national tone where I have full faith in the people of this country to take care of the rest.
All right, Carolyn, you think he's up to it?
Pardon me?
I think we had a little bit of an issue communicating with you in New Hampshire. Let's sort of unpack what this would involve of pardoning Donald Trump. Obviously, the Georgia stuff is outside the realm of what a president could do. But you've been all over the map, really, about Donald Trump. And I know in the past, you sort of...
I don't think so, actually.
Okay, well, we'll see. You've said that this passage I'm about to read from your book, you were joking. I've read it. Didn't sound like you were joking.
I didn't say any of these things,
so
that's okay.
It was a dark day for democracy. I'm reading the passage in your book, talking about January 6th. The loser of the last election refused to concede the race, claimed the election was stolen, raised hundreds of millions of dollars from loyal supporters, and considering running for executive office again. I am referring, of course, to Donald Trump. How is that someone who you can still say is a man who you would respect and believe is an advisor and a man of honor and commitment to the America that you say is so important from 1776?
Yeah, so first of all, that passage from the book was an identical quote where Donald Trump was actually filled in for Stacey Abrams, and we juxtaposed the two paragraphs. But put that to one side, that doesn't matter. The real point is, we're all human beings. Okay, we're not a nation of gods, we're not governed by gods. We're governed by flawed human beings. All of us are flawed human beings. But a bad judgment is not the same thing as a crime. Would I have made different judgments than Donald Trump made? Absolutely I would have. I will remind you that I'm running for U.S. president to lead our nation forward because I believe I am the best positioned individual in this race to do it. But I think separately it is a bad precedent that we set when we try to lock up those political opponents. That's bad for the country. And it's my view that, yes, Donald Trump was a successful president. At least made progress on the border crisis. The first president to recognize openly in either major political party the threats posed by China. I think his defeat of Hillary Clinton was probably the most important politically, not have a major war. We were not marching towards a major war, as we are potentially now. We were potentially on the brink of one for North Korea at the time that Barack Obama left us with that mess. And so, yes, I judge a president by the results. Does that mean he's perfect? Of course he's not. And I think there are areas to improve. But that is a very different statement than saying that he should be prosecuted for a wide array of crimes, which I think is not good for this country. And so, yes, I stand on the side of principle.
So political prosecution's not good for the country. Day one, you're going to pardon Donald Trump.
I will.
Okay. Reasonable people could probably agree that if Hunter Biden was Hunter Smith, he would not be being charged with these two tax charges and certainly not being charged on the gun charge. And certainly wouldn't have a special prosecutor looking into it.
I'm going to stop you right there on this one point. I don't think that that's what reasonable people would say. I think reasonable people would say that this guy who's underqualified even to hold a job at a local fast food chain is somehow earning millions of dollars sitting on the board of a Ukrainian energy company with no expertise in the energy sector and using and trading on his father's name to enrich his family, the same country that is now getting $200 billion of taxpayer aid when that same father's president. So I think that's what
if we were to bring all true, and I would agree with that, if we were to bring America together on day one, if you're going to pardon Donald Trump and principle is more important and bringing America together is more important, why wouldn't you also pardon Hunter Biden?
Well, here's my view on this, and I've been very clear on this. There can be no reconciliation without truth. That Hunter Biden laptop story, with a lot of those bribes, was censored systematically on the eve of the 2020 election. That is wrong. That is a stain on our national history. Now we have a U.S. president that is inexplicably providing hundreds of billions of dollars to our money to the very nation whose state-affiliated company bribed that president's family member, his own son. So we have to get to the bottom of it. I support that. But here's what I will say, Lou, is that as U.S. president, when I get to January 21st, 2025, my second day in office, after I've pardoned Donald Trump, after I've pardoned many of the other victims of politically motivated persecutions through prosecution, after we've won in a landslide election, are on our path to reunite this country and lead this nation forward, am I going to be focused on the Biden family, or am I going to be focused on American families throughout this country? I choose focus on American families. And so that's going to be my agenda. I'm not pursuing a politicized prosecution either. And that's where I stand on the side of principle.
When you say, though, not focused, does that mean you tell your attorney general, we're done, let's move on? Or does that mean that if the attorney general wants to investigate...
I think we need to get to the facts. I think we need to get to the facts. There can be no reconciliation without truth. The view of the police state
how are we going to get to the facts if it's not your priority?
Well, we have to ultimately, I do support an impeachment inquiry on Biden for these charges, especially as it relates to the funds being sent to Ukraine now, which are a repayment of a bribe. I do support vigorous investigation into Hunter Biden's dealings. We cannot have a government where foreign adversaries are buying and effectively paying for policies from our U.S. presidents as puppets. That's unacceptable. So I do support the investigations in getting to the bottom of the truth. But why are we even having a conversation about pardons when there hasn't even been an indictment of Hunter Biden, when there have been 3 to 4 now against Donald?
Right there. So I'll say phrase, words, whatever, give me a quick answer. First thing, it sounds a little bit like you think Trump will be convicted if you'd say you pardon him.
I don't necessarily know that. That's going to be up to the jury. But if he's convicted of these politicized prosecutions in the interest of moving this country forward, yes, I will pardon him.
All right. So future answers even shorter.
Okay.
All right. Here we go. Lightning round. Vladimir Putin. First words that come to your mind.
We can trust him to follow his self-interest, but he is not a friend to this nation.
Zelensky.
Fraud.
No. Direct. That's the most direct answer you've given all night. All right. There we go. All right. You have 2 sons. Daughter's name if you had one.
I haven't really thought about that, actually. Maybe Lakshmi.
All right. Does that have some certain meaning to you?
It does, yeah. She's in our faith, a symbol and goddess of prosperity.
All right. Say something nice about President Joe Biden.
I think he loves his son. And I'm not saying that lightly. I think he's a father who loves his son. And that small element of a deeply flawed man, I can still respect that.
All right. Do you think he is at least trying hard or just trying for himself?
I think he is barely capable in making decisions as a human being at his age. It's a form of elder abuse, what they're really putting him through. It's really the managerial class pulling the strings of their puppet. Joe Biden's just a puppet.
All right. Giorgia Meloni, Prime Minister of Italy.
Strong, good, like her, met her, gave her a copy of Woking. I hope she read it.
Did you hear back from her after you gave it to her?
I can't remember, actually. Yeah, both of us have been kind of busy. But I support a leader who stands for the national identity of her nation. What we're missing in this country is a national leader who stands for the identity of our nation. That's what I'm bringing to the table.
You are from Cincinnati. I am from St. Louis. We are in Chicago. I'm sure there's some jokes to be made about the Cardinals, the Reds, and the Cubs, but I'll refrain just for a minute. Favorite flavor of Graeter's ice cream?
I like, that's a pretty good one. Cookies and cream is pretty good.
Cookies and cream.
Yeah.
That's been basic, not black chip
I
raspberry.
think I start with the fundamentals.
All right, there we go. What is more likely, Bengals going back to the Super Bowl or the Reds to win the World Series?
Oh, I like the Bengals going back to the Super Bowl. Unfinished business. And so my whole life I had a dream the Bengals were going to win the Super Bowl. When they finally made it, I said we're going to go all the way to LA and watch it. They ended up losing on the final drive. So I still have hope.
All right, well, hope is a nice place to end this town hall. It's something you're trying to provide America. I know. As a reminder, at the start of the evening, we asked how many of you were undecided on who you would support in the Republican primary. So, once again, by a show of hands, who here, and we'll include our audiences in Des Moines and Manchester, is more likely to vote for Mr. Ramaswamy? All right, what about Manchester? Okay, we're just trying to zoom in here. It looks about half in Manchester, third in Manchester. Des Moines, Iowa, who's more likely after hearing Mr. Ramaswamy? All right, half there, and then we got about 2/3 here in Chicago. We'd like to thank our audience here in Chicago. You all have been great. Des Moines, Manchester, thank you. You all will be caucusing and voting here in the next 5 or 6 months. At home, the conversation is just beginning on social media. Use the hashtag #ViveTownHall. And with that, we thank you, Mr. Ramaswamy. This has been excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, man. Thank you all for the
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to both of the nominees. Ms. Clark.
Mike, do you hear that?
Is that a back to school commercial?
I need holders, string cheese, tiny orange.
To today's Talk Tuesday, the 25th of July now. I want to look at the ongoing problem with vitamin D deficiency, particularly with Alzheimer's disease today. There's just so much low-hanging fruit to improve health that we're simply not picking in the Western world, and the vitamin D situation is certainly one of them. We're going to get onto Alzheimer's disease in a minute. This is a real biological organic disease. So we see the healthy brain here with the grey matter on the outside and the white matter on the inside. And here we see the totally shrunken, shriveled up Alzheimer's brain, which is responsible for the disorientation and the progressive irreversible impairment of intellectual function, which is the definition of dementia. But let's look first of all at how common the prevalence of vitamin D is. So this study here, now the data from the United States is a little out of date now, but let's look at what we've got. Vitamin D deficiency and insufficiency in the US adults. Now this is published in 2018. Not a lot published since then really in terms of good quality sufficiency and vitamin D insufficiency are increasing at a global level, they say. And this remains true. Part of the problem is people have been advised to keep out the sun to prevent melanoma, which of course is correct. We don't want sunburn and melanoma. But there again, the vast majority of our vitamin D is made by exposure to the sun, so there's a balance.
Okay, I have a big update coming out of Washington, D.C.
All right, well, a headline in today's New York Sun, for those that read it, captures it. Ramaswamy, without Trump's shadow on the stage, dominates the GOP debate. Big buzz. Here he joins us. Vivek Ramaswamy, 2024 presidential candidate, founder of Strive Asset Management, author of Nation of Victims. Vivek, you did good last night. Those of us who know you were not at all surprised. I want to start out with one of my favorite parts, your defense of something called the nuclear family. I think you captured a lot here. Just take a listen. I know you've heard it.
Fatherlessness. And I think that goes hand in glove with the education crisis as well, because we have to remember education starts with the family, and the nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to mankind.
You know, Vivek, it may be politically incorrect, but I happen to think you're 1,000% correct. You've just put your finger on it. And I think that's one of the reasons there's such a big buzz for you today. What you thinking about this? You going to stay with this theme?
I am. I've been staying with this theme the entire campaign, Larry, because it's personal to me. I grew up with privilege, not money privilege, because my parents didn't come to this country with any money, but with the ultimate privilege of two parents in the house with a focus on educational achievement. That was my ticket to get ahead. And yes, as a father to my two sons, I want to give them that same privilege. But as the next president, I want to lead a country where every kid in this country gets that same opportunity too. And it's not like the federal government can create that. A lot of that has to come from culture. But the federal government can stop making the problem worse by literally paying and using taxpayer dollars to pay people across this country to do the exact opposite of what we should want them doing. We have anti-family incentives in this country. That is the real form of systemic inequality. You could call it, that's the equivalent of systemic racism that we should be talking about. The crisis of fatherlessness, 25% of kids being born into houses without a father in the house. That's what explains supposed racial inequalities and otherwise. And you're right, it is politically incorrect, but this campaign is all about speaking the hard truths that we have to actually acknowledge in order to fix this country.
And, you know, I thought also, look, and thank you for that. I thought also, you know, you had the courage to go against Biden's climate change craziness. Just absolutely crazy. You know, look, Trump is good on this too. You're good on this. This is, you know, the rise in energy prices permeates the entire economy. I'm not sure people understand that. I mean, there's hundreds of items in the CPI that are affected by the shortage of oil and gas and coal that has come from Biden's policies. And I think, I don't think a lot of the others got that message across, but I think you got that message across. You're going to stay with that too.
I am, and this is something I'm incredibly passionate about, Larry. The climate change agenda has actually nothing to do with the climate and everything to do with letting China catch up to the United States. If it had to do with the climate, then you would have to address this mystery of why the people who are opposed to carbon emissions in the United States, telling Exxon and Chevron to emit less carbon, are the same people who will not say a peep when PetroChina does the same thing. By the way, the biggest opponents to fossil fuels are also the biggest opponents to nuclear energy. 8 times as many people die of cold temperatures than warm ones. And there is a 98% reduction in the climate disaster-related death rate, tornadoes, heat waves, etc., due to advances powered by fossil fuels. So I say yes, drill, frack, burn coal, do it without apology. That's part of what we're going to need to revive our economy.
Just in recent days, or the last week, you've got a couple of Nobel Prize winners. One of them in, quantum mechanics. I'm not even sure I understand what that means. But they've come out and said that this whole climate thing is a hoax. They just called it a hoax. And that Biden has done more harm than good because he's preventing economic growth, not only here, but in less developed countries or in Africa too. I mean, they're doing enormous damage to this. The other thing is, promise me you're going to stay with the strong dollar and tax cuts, right? You know me, I want growth, absolutely. I want prosperity. I want to make America great again, Vivek.
And you know what? We are more united as a country. They're even proud of this country. But young people are going to be more proud of this country when they're economically prospering in this country. So I am unapologetically the pro-growth candidate in this race. Unlock American energy. Put people back to work by no longer paying them more to stay at home. Strive for dollar stability as the single mandate of the Fed. That's one of the tickets to economic growth. And the top war that I will wage as U.S. president isn't going to be some foreign war that doesn't advance American interests. It is going to be the war on the administrative regulatory state right here at home. Those three-letter agencies that are the source of what I believe are unconstitutional federal regulations that act like a wet blanket on the U.S. economy. And yes, simplifying the tax code, a simple flat tax, is an important part of that reform as well.
Vivek, this is a respectful question. It's not a cheeky one. If you don't get the nomination, and if you don't become president, is there a cabinet department that you would like to run that you could tear apart and get rid of the D.C. swamp? If you don't make it, which department would you like to tear apart?
Well, I have too much desire for tearing down the administrative state that effectively I need to tear down most of it. And I need to get in there and fire 75% of the headcount in Washington, D.C. And I think this is one of the areas where I'm able to learn the lessons that Trump did, but to go further. What they told Trump, and you might have been there for part of this to see it, Larry, is that you couldn't fire people in the administrative state because of civil service protections. The reality is I think we need a president who understands the law and the Constitution deeply so as not to be duped by those advisors. Because read the law. Those civil service protections only protect against individual firings. They do not protect against mass layoffs. And mass layoffs are exactly what I will bring to the D.C. bureaucracy. So I have to be the next president in order to be able to see that through and reach the next generation. And I will tell you this, Larry, as I said on the stage last night, I think Trump was the greatest president of the 21st century. I want him as my top advisor, dare I say it, as a mentor, to help me succeed in waging that war on the administrative state. But
Mike Jordan, Larry Bird,
the top office,
on the same team together.
Americans, bring them along, win this election in a landslide with a
Donald Trump.
working class majority.
Be as president, Donald Trump as VP.
Can actually deliver that landslide.
All right, well, you're all the buzz, Vivek Ramaswamy. You had a great night last night. We appreciate you coming back up.
Ramaswamy, you know who you are. Mr. R. Mr. Ramaswamy and Donald Trump. Motherfucking Michael Jordan and Larry Bird on the same team together. Ramaswamy and President Trump. Ramaswamy as president, Donald Trump as VP. Shit. We unstoppable.